Stranger in Time, Chapter 11. Lily huddled with May in the doorway of a nearby laundry. "Is there a back way into your family's apartment?" she asked. May shook her head. "It's just a single room behind the store. There's a window, but I'm not sure I'd fit." "What if the back alley is guarded?" "We could check." Lily slipped out from the doorway and ducked into the alley behind the Wong store. A soldier on a horse stood guard at the far end of the street. He was facing the other way. "Don't make a sound," Lily whispered. She was thankful now that the little canary didn't sing. They slipped from doorway to doorway until they were behind the store. "All right." May took a deep breath and started across the street. Lily pulled her back. "You can't just burst out and climb into the window," she whispered. "If that officer sees you, he'll think you're breaking in to loot, and with the mayor's order." Lily shook her head. She couldn't say the words aloud. The only way to make sure the soldier's attention didn't land on May was to give him someone else to worry about. "Let me go down the alley first," Lily said. "I'll approach him asking for help with, I don't know, something. I'll get him turned away so you could go in. Stay hidden until then." "But what if—" May bit her lip. Then she said, "All right, I'll be fast. Should we meet back by the laundry?" Lily nodded. "Be safe." She looked down at the ranger and whispered, "Ready, dog? You're coming with me." Ranger nuzzled Lily's hand and followed her into the alley. After a few steps, Lily's shoes crunched down on some shards of broken window. The soldier whirled his horse around. "Air is closed off," he shouted. Lily stopped. "Can you help me, please?" she called. I saw some men looting shops." She pointed past the soldier away from the Wong store. "I could show you." The officer frowned. He started towards Lily, but then turned back and looked up and down the street. "Come here," he called. Lily's heart thumped so hard she felt as if the earth might be shaking again. Ranger nudged her hand and then walked to the soldier. Lily stared up at him. It was up on Stockton. "Show me." The soldier turned to his horse and started up the street, but then glass smashed behind him. "No!" May must have knocked the window loose. The soldier whirled his horse around and started down the alley. Ranger wasn't sure what to think of the soldier, but he knew May was back there. He knew from all the whispers that she and Lily didn't want anyone to know, but the soldier was riding that way. Ranger started barking. The soldier looked over his shoulder. "What's that dog's problem?" He turned back towards the Wan store. Ranger ran up to the corner, barking and growling. He ran back to the soldier and barked again. Back and forth he raced until Lily said, "Oh, I bet he's seen the looters." She ran to the corner with Ranger and pointed. "Look!" The soldier galloped up beside her and narrowed his eyes. "I don't see anyone." Ranger ran ahead of them and stepped up to the doorway of a restaurant. He growled into the broken down darkness until the soldier rode up to him and peered into the building too. Lily dropped her birdcage and bundle. She pointed into the empty building and prayed the dog would keep barking at this imaginary looter. "Where'd they go, dog?" Ranger barked into the building. He stepped carefully into the entry. The building smelt of plaster and dust, chicken and grease. There were no men here. But Ranger could hear Lily talking with the soldiers outside. "He's a good dog. He'll bark if he finds them." Ranger stayed inside until he heard horses' hooves on the cobblestone. "Was the soldier leaving?" Ranger barked. The hooves stopped. Ranger padded out into the smoky afternoon light. Lily looked up at the soldiers and shook her head. "They must have gotten away. Perhaps you should—" "I will return to my post," the soldier said. "You will leave the area as ordered." Of course, Lily gathered her things and started towards the alley. The soldier pointed up the block. "The other way, now." He raised his rifle. Lily and Ranger hurried away. Halfway up the block, Lily stopped and turned to look back. The soldier was gone. He was probably already back at the entrance to the alley. She and the dog had only managed to keep him busy for a few minutes. Had it been long enough for May to get the papers and slip away? Lily led the dog around the block. She circled back to the laundry where she and May had agreed to meet. The doorway was empty. The street was littered with bricks and glass as usual, but Ranger spotted something else wedged in the cobblestone. He trotted over and found a tiny cloth doll. Ranger sniffed it. It smelled of cotton and dust and May. Ranger barked. Lily looked down and picked up the doll. She'd often seen May carrying a little cloth figure of her way to school. Had May left it for her on purpose to let her know she'd continue on the park to find Lee? Lily looked up and down the street. May wasn't there, but a new soldier was approaching. Lily didn't want to have another gun pointed her way. "Come on, dog." She turned and hurried up the hill. Behind her, a great booming blast shook the city. Had the men started blowing up buildings? Another explosion shook the street and cloud of dust filled the sky. How many would have to be destroyed to stop the fires? Would they dynamite the mission house, the Wong store and home? Lily was beginning to wonder if anything would be left to the city when they finally ended. Adventure in Time, Chapter 12. City in the Park. Lily plodded up the hill towards Golden Gate Park. The streets weren't as crowded as they'd been earlier, but ever so often Lily passed someone hurrying back down towards Chinatown. Maybe they were hoping to save their family's papers like May. Lily hoped they'd find their way past those soldiers, get what they needed, and stay safe. Where was May? Lily searched every doorway she passed. Once she got away from Chinatown, the streets grew busier. Families gathered around stoves they dragged outside or built out of stones. They fired bacon and stirred pots, watching the fires spread into the distance. Bacon? Ranger was hungry. Scents of smoked meat and chicken stewed mingled with the ash from the fires. All the families gathered around their homemade brick ovens reminded him of cooking out on the patio with Luke and Sadie and their parents. Those fires were full of rich smells and easy laughter, but it wasn't like that now. Here, good scents mingled with other smells, crumbling buildings, bitter smoke, and death. They'd passed several horses that had been crushed under fallen walls. Ranger walked close to Lily, nudging her away from the building that still seemed to be settling from the quake. Ranger sniffed at the doll sticking out from Lily's bundle of clothes. He sniffed again and got so close to Lily that she tripped over his feet. "What are you doing, dog?" Lily asked. She stopped, took the doll from the stack, and looked at it. Then she held it out to Ranger. "Are you after May's doll?" Ranger sniffed again. "We need to find her. Where is she?" Lily asked. "Find." Ranger barked. He sniffed at the air and the ground from any other trace of May's scent. But if she'd escaped Chinatown before the blast began, she hadn't come this way. After a few blocks, Lily sighed and tucked the doll down into her bundle. She kept watching for May, but there was no sign of her friend. Lily wasn't even sure which direction she was headed anymore. Her eyes burned. Her feet ached. Her hands were cramped and her arms trembled from carrying the birdcage and bundle of clothes so far. Every few blocks, another fire or block-off street turned her around. Finally, she found her way back to Market Street and climbed the long hill to Golden Gate Park. When she arrived, the entire city was there. At least it seemed that way. The army had open relief stations. Tired-looking people stood in long lines that snaked around buildings and trees. Lily stepped up to an officer who was watching a line. "Excuse me, I'm looking for my friend." "Ha!" The man laughed and swept his arms out over the mob. "Good luck." Lily didn't give up. She'd be with her brother, I think, and he's hurt. Is there a hospital? Someplace where the injured are being tended? The man tipped his hat towards the mob. "Hospital's tents over yonder." Then he looked down at Lily. "But you've moved the Chinese to a separate camp at Presidio." He pointed the other way. Lily was confused. "But the doctor and mechanics pavilion said..." "You're not going to find your people here," the soldier said. "You'd best be on your way." And he turned back to the bread line. Tears stung Lily's eyes. Her stomach ached with hunger, but she took Ranger's collar, whispered, "Come on, dog," and squeezed through the crowd in the direction the officer had pointed. Lily gripped the birdcage so tightly her hand cramped. Every part of her felt angry and clenched. Why wasn't Lee being cared for where the doctor had sent him? What kind of city took the time to sort and separate people when everyone was hurting so much? Ranger nudged Lily's hand. She ignored him at first, but then he nuzzled again and she stopped for a moment. She put down the birdcage and her bundle of cloths, dropped to her knees beside him, and left herself cry. Ranger leaned against her as she sobbed. Then he licked her cheek. Lily sniffed and took a deep breath. Then she stood and picked up her things. "We'll find Lee and May at the Presidio," she told Ranger. Her voice sounded certain and true, but she'd never felt more alone in her life.